Verbal and non-verbal communication. A communication in which words are used can be called verbal communication, and the communication over long distance takes place usually through verbal communication. As an adjust to this in the non-verbal communication, which refers to the use of body language in communicating ideas from the sender to the receiver. Non-verbal communication most often takes place unconsciously, and it may either fortify the supplement of the verbal communication or may at times negate the very purpose of verbal communication. Let us examine such of this one of by one. The main characteristics of verbal communication is the use of words, either written or spoken. Written communication includes personal letters, memoranda, policy and procedures, manuals and notices places on the notice boards. Example of oral communication are conference, committee meeting, telephonic conversation, loudspeaker announcement, etc. Both written and oral communication have their merits and demerits. The written communication has the advantage of being easily verified and of being more precisely defined in there arises a need of subsequent correction. Spoken messages cannot always be verified so easily. Secondly, because of a written communication is likely to be permanent record, we are more particular to making it precise and accurate. Thirdly, lengthy and complicated messages are better understand if they are put in writing. It would be difficult to understand and retain a lengthy message if it were only in oral form. Together with these advantages, written communications have some drawbacks also. Some of these are: firstly, it is a slower method of communication if we consider the total amount of time involved from the formulation of idea by the sender to the understanding of the idea by the receiver. A written communication competes with all other written material that reaches the desk of an executive. As such, there can be a gap between the time when a communication reaches the manager's desk and the time when he read it. Moreover, if clarification are needed because the message is not clear to the receiver, further delay would take place. Secondly, despite the fact that a greater degree of presence is aimed at while preparing a written communication, there is always a possibility of ambiguity, a lack of clarity creeping in, leading to misunderstanding on the part of the receiver. Clarification naturally means delay. Lastly, our reliance on written communication can lead to too much of paperwork in the organization. This is only consumes time, money, and energy, but also indicates a lack of trust among the employees of the organization. It has been observed that when trust is low and suspicious are high in an organization, an over reliance or written communication is likely to occur. Oral communication. Although an organization cannot function without written communications of various kinds, yet by far the greater percentage of information is communicated orally. It has been observed that managers spend 60 to 80% of their work time in oral communication. Oral communication has the merit of being more rapid. Generally, the spoken word is the quicker and less complicated way to getting one's ideas across another person. Again, it offers the potential of two-way information flow and therefore less possibility of misunderstanding and the communication. The creation of a less formal atmosphere and generation of fellow feeling are the additional advantage brought about through oral communication. However, the oral communication is not entirely free from defects. It is less effective as a mean of presenting complicated and lengthy data. It is also subject to misinterpretation and the effect of barriers arising from interpersonal relationships. Can you determine which of the two, oral or written, it is the better means of communication? Who will see that the choice between the two is, generally speaking, determined by the situation. However, the use of both together will very often strengthen and reinforce a message. Taking your own case, the material in your hand is the written communication, which will be fortified subsequently through oral communication in the context of classes or educational TV programs. The two together, we hope, will further increase your understanding of the concept of applications of management. Choosing your words, you have read earlier that communication refers to the transmission of meaning from the sender to the receiver. Such transmission takes place through the use of symbols, whether verbal or non-verbal. In verbal communication, the symbol is the word. In order to the transmission of meaning takes place, it is important that the particular symbol used most must create within the mind of the receiver the same image which was in the mind of the sender of the communication. It is only then that the basic purpose of communication, which is to influence the behavior of the receiver, will be achieved. It has been found that words do not necessarily have commonly understood meanings. The abstract word like participation or democracy or satisfactory suffers from the difficulty that different people are likely to attach different meanings to these words. The greater the use of such subtract word, the bigger the difficulty it in bringing about the understanding of this message and a change in behavior through communication. Keith Davis, in his well known book Human Behavior at Work, Organizational Behavior, has suggested a few guidelines for making verbal communication more effective. These are: use simple words and phrases, use short and familiar words, use personal pronouns such as you whenever appropriated. Give illustrations and examples. Use short sentence and paragraphs. Use active verbs as such as in manager plans. Economize on adjectives. Express through logically and in the direct way. Avoid unnecessary words. Use of body language in determining the effectiveness of communication in the sense of effective a change in behavior. Non-verbal communication has an important role to play. Experts in the field of human communication have found that in the typical message between two persons, only when 7% of the meaning are content of the message is carried by the actual words being used. Another 38% of the message is carried by one's tone of voice, which includes pacing, timing, pauses, accents. Major part of 55% of the content of the message is in non-verbal form. In other words, in the form of our physical attitude going along with our verbal message. The physical attitude is also referred to as body language. Non-verbal communication can take place with our action or with our body gesture. For example, a manager who pounds his fist on the table while announcing that from now on participative management will be practiced in his organization creates a credibility gap between he says and what he practices. A manager who says that he believes in an open door policy for all his employees but is busy with his own files while an employee is giving him certain suggestions towards improvement in work environment is making non-verbal communication quite in conflict with his verbal communication. In such situation, we the non-verbal message is the stronger one and the verbal message will case to be effective. Body gesture that communicate may relate to your handshake, your smile, your eye contact, your posture while standing or sitting, your facial expression while listening, the shrug of your shoulder. Indeed, the movement of your any part of your body, you must therefore the watchful of your body language so that it does not contradict your verbal message. This is indeed difficult because the body language is so involuntary that we are not even aware of it. Some of the non-verbal actions which assist communication include maintaining eye contact, occasionally nodding the head in agreement, smiling and showing animation, listening, leaning towards the speaker, speaking at the moderate rate in a quiet tone. Some of non-verbal actions that impede the communication are looking away or turning away from the speaker, sneering, sneering or using other contemptuous gesture, closing your eyes, using an unpleasant tone of voice, speaking too slow or too fast.